Earthquake, Twister, Dante's Peak, Deep Impact, Cloverfield, Killer Flood, Avalanche, Titanic, Leonard Part 6, all depict disasters in some way, shape, or form. Most of them, however, do this because they are part of a genre known as disaster films. The first film to be accredited with this distinction is 1939's Five Came Back, starring Chester Morris, Lucille Ball, John Carradine, Wendy Berry, and C. Aubrey Smith. You may be a little bit confused if you try looking this film up on Google, because Google will tell you that the role of Peggy Nolan in the film was played not by Lucille Ball, but by Desi Arnaz, Lucille Ball's ex-husband. No. Five Came Back was directed by John Farrow, father of actress Mia Farrow. It was produced by doomed production house RKO. Let's just say the plot was the only intentional disaster tied to this film. So, let's see what disasters await us. We open at the generic municipal airport. Rich guy Judson and his secretary Alice are dropped off at the airport by taxi and tell the driver that, if anyone asks, he's never seen them and didn't bring them there. A porter is looking for Peggy Nolan, played by a young Lucille Ball. Watching movies like this is kind of like looking at celebrity baby pictures. Aw, she was so cute at that age. She receives a package with an orchid and a note saying, "Thanks for all you're doing." She throws out the note and gives the orchid to the flower seller to sell. Flower sellers were still a thing then. Where have all the flowers gone? The co-pilot, Joe, takes one look at Alice and is clearly smitten. Meanwhile, Tommy is brought to the airport by his father and sent onto the plane with his uncle Pete. Tommy's father's story sounds very mysterious. It seems this plane is heading to Panama City. The Panama City, I'm assuming, not the Florida one.
We're taking on an anarchist.
Anarchist?
Yes, murdered some war minister down south.
Murderer?
Not a felon, or a prisoner, or a criminal, or a murderer, but an anarchist. He's an anarchist! Oh, who happened to kill somebody. This is where we come to a very young John Carradine. Look at sweet little John Carradine's baby face. Carradine is playing Mr. Crimp, a man hired by the Department of Labor to escort Vasquez, the murdering anarchist, to Panama City and to collect $5,000 as a reward. Vasquez does try to escape first.
So don't try to stop me.
We won't. We'll let this guy do it instead. His face is so long and skinny. Peggy helps light Vasquez's is hard to say. Peggy helps light his cigarette, then snubs Mr. Crimp.
Looks like we're taking the same plane, sister.
I don't talk to cops.
Yeah, so shove it, skinny chin. Peggy clearly has a thing for the pilot, Bill. Bill seems to not be getting it. Meanwhile, his co-pilot Joe is clearly chasing Alice, despite her running to Panama City to elope with Judson. It's true, ladies. Many men just don't get the hint.
I'll stay awake all night.
Yes, that's just what your face needs to become more gaunt. I love how this tiny little plane has all private bedrooms for its passengers.
Lady, we hit some bumpy air over the mountains. You might feel it less if you go to bed. Go to sleep.
I get it.
See, women can take a hint. Usually. One actor in a small role you might recognize is Dick Hogan as the steward. You may recognize him as David, the man being strangled at the beginning of Alfred Hitchcock's Rope. At least he got more film time somewhere. They land somewhere to fuel up and eat breakfast. You'll notice a dozen people pile in and out of this plane, but the title of the movie is Five Came Back. We gotta somehow lose about 7 people in the next hour. After forcing his company upon them for breakfast, Joe finds out that Judson and Alice are eloping.
So what? I bought their breakfast for them.
See, nothing's free. The second night, there seems to be a storm approaching.
The weather at Panama is 0-0.
Does 0-0 mean they're not having weather today? C. Aubrey Smith is a professor of botany, so naturally, this means he knows all about headhunters. A news report comes in on the radio. Yes, kids, they just randomly listened to the radio on planes back then, apparently. The news report says that a notorious mob boss has been killed.
Was someone talking about my daddy?
Nah, you was hearing things, kid.
Sure, stop him from getting screwed up by grief by screwing him up with gaslighting instead. That's healthy. The boy starts crying. Peggy tries to help comfort the child and is refused, so Martha takes him. That's the thing about classic films. Even the women who were supposed to be like trashy or of ill repute are still classier than women today. Thanks to the storm, the plane is now hitting turbulence. Hey guys!
Want some hot coffee?
No. How are the passengers?
Well, not bad, but that detective fellow's getting liquored up pretty fast.
Well, watch him. If he turns mean, call me.
So I can steal the rest of his liquor. The left engine goes out, so the steward tells everybody to fasten their seatbelts. Drunken Mr. Crimp tries to hijack the plane to go back. Meanwhile, the steward falls out of the plane. Dick Hogan should never ride planes or make friends in college. They are forced to land the plane somewhere in a remote jungle.
You might have chosen a less forsaken spot. I'm sure this place is just crawling with insects.
No, that's just John Carradine. Bill is designated as in charge since he is the pilot of the downed plane, and they begin divvying up responsibilities. Crimp thinks he should be in charge because he paid airfare. Vasquez gives Bill a gun that I'm assuming he stole from Crimp in the first place. So what does a film need when you have a drunk? Another drunk.
Stand up, sit down, do this and do that.
Can't you read the sign? Later we get a montage of Joe keeping a journal of how long they've been there and everyone contributing to the daily chores, or just drinking. Pretty sure this film was the inspiration for Gilligan's Island. We have Gilligan, the skipper, the millionaire, his wife, the movie star, the professor, and, Marianne?
On the basis of circumstantial evidence, I'm afraid you're a prevaricator.
Shut up, Professor.
Why do you take your whiskers off, Uncle Pete?
You want me to look like a gorilla?
You're assuming you don't already?
We're getting to know one another pretty well now. I feel I can speak freely to you, Vasquez.
Your breath stinks.
Now look at this camp. There are no classes here. We have chosen a leader in whom we all have supreme confidence and whom we respect completely. We have plenty to eat. We are well sheltered. We are in good health. By all theories, ours is an ideal community.
The drunks fight over a bottle of liquor. Don't punch Crimp. He can't afford to lose any more chin.
You know, Judson, I'd hate to have to hit you.
Would you really, though? Alice seems to be having second thoughts on her millionaire fiancé, but she appears to have a backup plan, so she'll be okay. Next thing we know, Crimp is missing, which is too bad because the pilots are pretty confident that they can get them all out of there the next morning.
Back to our normal living, huh? To you, Mr. Ellis, it will mean marriage and happiness.
I think I'll turn in.
Into someone Judson is not marrying. Judson follows Alice into her hut and says they probably won't ever get out of there, so he tries forcing himself on Alice, but she slaps him and he leaves. The professor is worried about Crimp and everyone else because he's pretty sure he heard drums. The next morning they start the engines and they work, so now they need to clear a runway. Meanwhile, Tommy goes to play by the river and follows a monkey into the jungle where he finds Crimp sleeping. Yeah, that's a NyQuil dart sticking out of him. Pete tells Peggy to take Tommy. He'll stay there for some reason. They decide to clear out the plane to make the plane as light as possible. Pete stumbles over and they find a NyQuil dart in him too. They decide to hurry up and leave, especially now that they hear drums. When they go to repair a broken oil line, they decide that the plane will be able to save 4 adults and Tommy. So they have to decide who will go and who will stay and face the headhunters. Hence the title 5 came back. RKO was known during this era for churning out a bunch of B movies, and 5 Came Back was one of these movies that actually tripled its budget at the box office. So why is this film in the dumpster today? First of all, not only was RKO known for churning out a bunch of B movies, they were known for doing it in a short period of time. So this film was released among several others that year from RKO alone, including other production houses. Do you know what else came out in 1939? Gone with the Wind, The Wizard of Oz, Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, Stagecoach, Wuthering Heights, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. By the way, is Hunchback really considered a romance? I know there is romance in it, But there's romance in Terminator too, and that's not a romance film. I'm getting distracted. In the midst of all of those films now recognized as classics, even though some were not originally considered as such, maybe this one just got lost in the fray. And coming out of a B movie house like RKO, maybe it just did not have the reputation to back it up. It's really a shame because it's actually a pretty good film. The characters overall could use a little more fleshing out, but for 1939 and a movie that's only an hour and 15 minutes long, it still does a decent job with that. The actors themselves also handled their characters well with few or no weak links in the cast. Maybe just a weak chin here and there. You may have noticed that I never told you which 5 came back. That's because you're just going to have to watch it and find out for yourself. Huh? The man being strangled at the beginning of Edward Hitchcock? Oh my god.